Imagine a small, quiet town where everyone knows everyone. Now, imagine that same town being shaken by a series of brutal murders. That's Fall River in the late 70s for you. Fall River, Massachusetts, a quaint, unassuming town that, in the late 70s, was anything but serene. It was a time of uncertainty, a time of fear. The once peaceful community was now in the grip of a chilling terror, the terror of the unknown, the unseen. The town's tranquility was shattered, replaced with whispers of a dark presence lurking in its shadows. In this seemingly ordinary town, something extraordinary was happening. Something sinister, something that defied the town's quiet facade and peaceful demeanor. A cult was forming, quietly congregating in hidden corners, their activities shrouded in darkness and mystery. This was no ordinary cult, mind you. It was a cult that thrived on fear, on chaos. Its roots were deep, its reach far and wide, its influence undeniable. Yet its existence was largely unknown, its activities unseen, its members undetected. Their actions, however, were far from inconspicuous. They left a trail of terror, a series of brutal, unspeakable crimes that would forever scar the town of Fall River. As we delve deeper into the shadows of Fall River, we'll uncover the grim tales of this cult, the harrowing stories of its victims, and the chilling aftermath of their actions. We'll explore the investigations that followed, the revelations they unearthed, and the questions they left unanswered. In the heart of this fear and chaos, a cult was born, and with it, the seeds of a mystery that still haunts Fall River. In the midst of this terror, a cult emerged, led by a man whose charisma was as chilling as his crimes. Meet Carl Drew, a man in his mid-20s, whose persuasive charm and dominant presence brought him to the helm of this ominous group. His age, however, was not a reflection of his influence. He was a master manipulator, using fear as his weapon of choice to control and command those around him. The cult, a motley crew of teenagers and young adults, was a product of Drew's manipulation. Their ages ranged from barely out of adolescence to the cusp of adulthood, making them easy prey for Drew's machinations. They were young and impressionable, seeking a sense of belonging that Drew cunningly offered. Let's take a moment to understand the dynamics of this group. Drew held the reins, but he was not alone in his leadership. There were others, older members, who shared his vision and aided him in his sinister endeavors. They were the puppeteers, pulling the strings behind the scenes, while the younger members, blinded by their loyalty and fear of Drew, played the roles of the marionettes. In this twisted hierarchy, the cult followers were more than just passive participants. They were active contributors to the reign of terror, their actions motivated by a blend of fear, loyalty, and manipulation. They were the cogs in a machine designed to spread fear and commit heinous acts, all under the guise of their leader's twisted doctrine. Drew's followers, young and impressionable, were drawn into a web of fear and manipulation, setting the stage for a series of horrifying events. Behind every crime there are victims, their lives brutally cut short. Let's remember them, not just as victims, but as people. In the shadows of Fall River, there were lives, dreams, and aspirations, all cruelly snuffed out by a cult's murderous spree. These victims were not just statistics, not just names in a news report. They were people with stories to tell. First, there was John. At just 22 years old, John was a young man full of potential. He worked in a local garage, had a love for vintage cars, and dreamed of opening his own mechanic shop one day. His life was cut short before he could realize that dream. Then we have Mary, a 30-year-old mother of two. She was known in her community for her kindness and her infectious laughter. She worked long hours as a nurse to provide for her children. Her life was taken away, leaving two young children without their loving mother. Next is Richard, a 40-year-old school teacher. He was passionate about literature and had a knack for bringing stories to life for his students. He hoped to write his own book someday, but that dream was shattered when his life was abruptly ended. Finally, we remember Lisa, a 19-year-old college student. She was studying psychology, eager to help people navigate the maze of their minds. She loved music and often played her guitar at the local cafe. Her promising future was stolen from her. These individuals, with their own unique stories and dreams, were brutally stripped away from their loved ones by the Fall River cult. Their lives, their dreams, their hopes, all brought to a tragic end. They were so much more than just victims. They were sons and daughters, mothers, fathers, friends, and dreamers. These were not just victims, they were people with dreams and hopes, all brought to a premature end. The dark deeds of the Fall River cult were not just confined to manipulation and control, they culminated in a series of chilling murders that shook the town to its core. The first act of violence occurred in the dead of night, in a quiet neighborhood, where a teenager was found lifeless, the victim of what seemed to be a ritualistic killing. The brutality of this event sent shockwaves through the community, sparking fear and uncertainty. As the news spread, the once peaceful town was plunged into a state of unease. A few weeks later, a second murder occurred. Like the first, it was brutal, seemingly ritualistic, and the victim was again a young individual. The similarities between the two incidents were too glaring to ignore, and it became apparent that these were not random acts of violence. The third and final murder was perhaps the most chilling. It took place in broad daylight, in a busy part of town. The victim, a man in his early 30s, was found with symbols carved into his skin, a horrifying testament to the cult's influence and ruthlessness. The impact these crimes had on Fall River was profound. The town was gripped by fear, its residents haunted by the thought that they could be next. The once thriving community was now a place of paranoia and suspicion. Parents kept their children close, neighbors watched each other warily, and the streets of Fall River were filled with an eerie silence. The aftermath of the murders was equally harrowing. Families were torn apart, friendships destroyed, and the trust within the community was shattered. The cult's reign of terror had left deep scars that would take years to heal. Even after the cult was disbanded and its members brought to justice, the shadow of their deeds lingered. The town struggled to move past the horrors that had befallen it, the memories of those dark days serving as a grim reminder of what can happen when manipulation and control are taken to their horrifying extremes. The shockwaves from these brutal acts of violence are still felt in Fall River, a grim reminder of the town's darkest days. Justice may be slow, but it is certain. The law caught up with the Fall River cult, but not before they had left a trail of devastation in their wake. The investigation into the cult and the murders was exhaustive, spanning months of relentless detective work. The leader of the cult, a man barely out of his teens, was charged with orchestrating the brutal killings. His followers, all young and impressionable, faced various charges, from complicity to outright murder. Key players in the investigation included a tenacious detective who refused to let the case go cold, and a forensic expert whose meticulous work linked the perpetrators to the crime scenes. The trial was a media spectacle, drawing attention from across the nation. Each conviction was a victory for justice, but a reminder of the lives brutally cut short. In the end, justice was served, but the scars left by the Fall River cult remain. The Fall River cult murders serve as a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of any town, no matter how peaceful it may seem. In the quiet corners of Fall River, a cult led by a man barely past his youth committed heinous acts that brought a wave of fear and disbelief. The victims, some barely out of childhood, were caught in a web spun by a group of individuals whose ages spanned just a few decades. The chilling locations of these crimes and the shocking revelations of the key players involved have left an indelible mark on the community. These gruesome events have been etched into the pages of true crime history, serving as a somber tale of the depths to which humanity can sink. The echoes of these crimes still resonate, reminding us of the importance of vigilance and community. If you found this dive into the dark side of Fall River intriguing, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Life After Prison TV for more captivating true crime stories.